You're listening to Holy Health, the podcast that brings you the latest in health ideas and technology across the spectrum of fields. While ultimately our fate is up to God, how we get there is determined by us. As it says in Kohelet, there is nothing new under the sun. We get that everything can be found in Torah. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge that may help you make better lifestyle choices. This podcast has been brought to you by Musach Haguf Physical Therapy and Personal Training Studio. Our motto is fixing the past in order to build the future. You can find us on Instagram at Musach Haguf. Hey guys, just wanted to come on and give a quick intro to this week's episode with Clint Ober on the absolutely incredible health benefits of what you may know as grounding or earthing, something some of you may have heard of, maybe some of you haven't. I've been saving this one for this week right before Sukkot because I feel like there's no holiday that would connect us with the ground and the elements more than the holiday of Sukkot, when we go out and we spend this week living in our sukkah. So first of all, I'd like you guys to know that the Earthing Institute has kindly granted us a 1-month discount code. That code is Holy Health for any of you guys that would like to purchase something for them. All of their items are really pretty reasonably priced considering what you're getting them for and how long they last. And this 20% off discount is something that they do not usually offer. So if anyone is thinking of getting something, listen. As you will hear Clint talk about, you can take off your shoes, you can go outside, find some ground, and anybody can ground. But if you want some constant ways of grounding, if you're somebody who already has a high level of inflammation, maybe you're suffering from an autoimmune disease, or maybe something that you don't realize is an autoimmune disease, maybe you're pre-diabetic, maybe you have a thyroid problem, you don't realize that often thyroid is and hormones and things like that can be related to autoimmune or just too much inflammation in the body. This is a great opportunity to purchase something if you'd like. I'm not making anything off of this. This isn't an affiliate code. This is really a 1-month discount code for you guys. So I will attach that code at the end of this episode as well. But I want to wish all of you a Chag Sameach, a Moadim L'Simcha, and I hope that everybody will enjoy this amazing, one of my favorite holidays. Go outside, ground yourself, and just have a great time in your sukkah this week. As always, I appreciate all of you who've been sharing this and who've been listening, and all of you who often send me little messages commenting on what you liked about the episodes, occasionally what you didn't like. It's usually what you liked, but sometimes maybe things that you feel I could do better. And I'm always open to hearing those things. So please, if you've got any comments, feel free to reach out to me. If there's an idea or an episode or a topic or something that you would like me to cover that I haven't covered yet, please feel free to reach out. I have a lot of exciting things coming up over the next couple of months. I'm always recording, but I'm always open to hearing about new people that you've heard about or new ideas for new things that you think the community would like to hear about. Thank you so much, and Chag Sameach. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Holy Health. My guest today is Clint Ober. For more than 20 years, Clint has dedicated his life to improving the life of everyone on Earth. In 1998, after a successful career grounding systems in the cable TV industry, Clint began investigating the potential to improve human health with grounding. Today, he's the founder of the Earth FX Incorporated, a research and development company located in California, where he's helped to develop and patent the first indoor earthing products. His products are now used by millions around the world daily to improve their quality of life.
Cool.
Thank you so much. First off, I'd like to welcome you, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
Well, thanks, Dara. It's really a privilege to be on your show and be able to visit with you and your following.
Thank you so much. So first off, I'd love to just know, a little bit of the backstory. Like, how did you get into even grounding, cable TV systems? Like, how did you get into all of that?
Okay. Well, I guess, I started out in Montana, which, in northern United States. And I grew up on kind of a ranch environment where we raised animals. And in that background, you spend a lot of time alone when you live in rural areas. And my best friends growing up, some of them were Native Americans, the Crow and the Cheyenne and a few. And so I have a very different background, I guess. But anyhow, as far as taking care of animals when you're young, my grandfather taught me, he said the first, the main thing you do here is try to keep the pasture clean and pristine, and the water, and so the animals can be healthy. But if something, if noxious weeds begin to grow in the pasture, or the water gets contaminated, or if something happens in the pasture, then the animals will get sick. We have to call the vet. Then we have to call the bank at the same time and toss the keys in the air and say, "You guys own this. We're out of here," because the healthcare cost would be too great, to allow for a profit to be made. So I kind of always had that prevention background. If there's something wrong, well, what's in the water? What caused this? And so that's just innate in me. And then growing up with Native American people, and I'm 80 years old now, so when I talk, I go back a long ways.
You don't look 80.
Okay, well, I am. My bones say it. I am. Yeah. But anyhow, in growing up with the Native American, they gave me a whole different view on life than I had from my family. And their concept was very simple. It's like everything is connected, everything is one thing. All life is, if you affect this life here, it affects life everywhere, and so on. But that whole concept, and then the biggest difference was they never really understood ownership. Meaning, how can you own those trees, or how can you own that mountain, or how can you own, the water? I mean, that belongs to everybody. And but Anglo is, they're different. It's put up a fence and I own this. Where it is not in their culture, or at least it wasn't back then. This concept of ownership, and so, but they gave me a bigger view of connectedness to nature and to all living things. Like, blade of grass is my cousin on some level.
Right.
Every living thing is, I'm a part of it, and it's a part of me, and we all are swimming in the same pond, kind of concept. And so I've always had a very organic, earthy outlook on everything. And it's innate. I wouldn't change it for a minute. Tried everything else, didn't work for me. But anyhow, when I was quite young, around 20, somewhere in that area, they started building cable television. That's where television had come along in the 50s, but a lot of people couldn't get any TV because of the mountains or the distance between where the TV signals were coming from and so on. So we started building these cable systems where we put an antenna up on top of a mountain, pick up the signal, and then run it down the side of the mountain, and then run it off to the homes. And I kind of cut my teeth on that industry, but I really fell in love with it, because now, if you didn't have any TV, now you get to see a whole new world. If you have one or two TV stations, then all of a sudden you can bring in a distant city, 100, 200 miles away, and you can see their news. Then all of a sudden your world is bigger. So you get to see, it's not good or bad or anything like that. It's just, wow, the world's bigger than me. It's bigger than the little newspaper in my town and all the little crazy stuff that goes on. And so it's kind of a window on the world. And I liked it because you could see yourself. I mean, you could see how you fit in, or I don't know how to put that in words, but anyhow, so I spent 30 years in that industry, and I helped build it from the ground up. And and as it grew, I just continued to, it was like in 1970, we learned that satellites were stationary. So we could bounce a signal off of a TV station out of Atlanta, Georgia, and feed it to a cable system in Billings, Montana, or Missoula, Montana. That was a big deal. Now the world really shrank. And then after that, we saw that, well, first of all, in that industry, as building those systems, we had to ground everything to the earth, because the earth, anything that's electrical that is in the environment, like aerial wires and everything, has to be grounded to the earth in case there's lightning or an electrical activity. It's always grounded out before the cable goes into the home. Because if you don't ground it and there's lightning hits it, then you can have a fire in the home, or it'll blow up the TV, or problems. So grounding is about safety, electrical safety. And so I spent 30 years in that industry, and with the working knowledge of grounding everything for electrical stability and safety. And I just never give too much thought to it, but very few people, if you're not in that industry or the telephone industry, you don't really know or think much about grounding. But in those industries, everything's electrically sensitive, and especially with the cable systems and the internet and all of those kind of things. So it's really important. So anyhow, I spent 30 years in that industry, and with a working background of knowing that everything had to be grounded, best practices, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of that backstory.
And how did you connect grounding TVs to like grounding us, right? Like people needing to be grounded.
Well, when I was about 50 years old, I retired from the cable industry. That was 30 years ago. And I had a medical issue. I had an abscess develop in my liver, and it took them a long time to figure out what it was. And by the time they did figure out what it was, it had destroyed most of my liver, and they weren't sure that I had time to get a new liver, which they said I didn't really. And so anyhow, they put me on IVs, all that kind of stuff, told me to go home, clean up my life, and because there's no assurance that I could get a new liver. And so anyhow, about a week later, a surgeon from Swedish Medical Center in Denver called, and they said they would like to do some experimental surgery. So they went in and cut out the majority of the main lobe of my liver, and then they sewed me back up. And I couldn't really walk for a couple of days, had no energy. It took me about, I went home in maybe 10 days, and then I started walking, and it took me about maybe 6 months to walk a mile. But anyhow, I regained my health, and in that 6 months, my liver grew back 100% to its original size. So at 50 years old, I have, a brand new liver. And so anyhow, but when I went through that process, here I was, king of the mountain in Denver, Colorado, with all the kings of the cable TV industry and all that. And then here, all of a sudden, one day, I was living in a 5,000 square foot home on the top of a mountain outside Evergreen, Colorado. And I had, it was a 2-bedroom home, but I needed all that space because I had collected art my whole life. I love art. I love to collect art. And anyhow, so when I went through that experience and I came home, and I was laying in bed one morning, I woke up and I started looking around, and I thought, what would have happened if I had died? Because nobody would have known why I bought this art or what it is or what the meanings were, the values or anything. Nobody would have known anything about me or anything. And they would have given it away, donated it, whatever, sold it. And it just gave me a cold chill because I had spent my whole life accumulating those things and then building bigger homes, so I could take care of all the things that I bought. And then I wake up this particular morning, and I look out the window and I recognize that, when you leave alone. You don't get to take any of this with you. And nobody really cares about what you do, or what you did in your life. They're busy caring about their own life. So anyhow, it kind of built a perspective here is all I'm trying to do here. And
That's
then,
okay.
so I ended up, but anyhow, on that same day, that same morning, at the end of my bed, there was this big, 4 by 5 foot, beautiful Native American painting and a special artist. And anyhow, I looked at it and I just, and then all of a sudden I looked out the window, and it's like, and it was in a mountaintop community, evergreen. But I looked out the window and the sky was more vibrant blue than I was used to. The pine needles were kind of vibrant green, brighter and just more energetic. And everything seemed more alive, more something. I couldn't really figure it out. I thought maybe it was the drugs. I didn't know. But anyhow, afterwards, I just recognized that I never owned any of these things, ever. Any of them. All I did was make my life about going and finding them, collecting them, bringing them home and protecting them. And I spent my whole life about taking care of these physical things that I had acquired. And in an instant, I had this aversion. I didn't want to own anything. I wanted to find a home for everything, but I didn't want to own anything. I wanted freedom. I wanted totally to be free because I almost died. And I having created some wealth and all these things, that was all nice. But when you die, none of that goes with you. And there's something changed. You don't feel good. I didn't feel good about my life, even though I had done a lot of nice things, because I wanted my life to be worth something, or I couldn't explain it. But so what I did over the next few weeks and months, I gave away absolutely everything I owned, sold a house, bought a small RV, put 2.5 suitcases in it, and I took off and I started traveling around the United States, living in national parks for almost 4 years.
Wow.
And I would stop and see my children along the way and some old friends occasionally, but primarily I just enjoyed being by myself in nature. I grew up that way. So one day I had this urge. I wanted, in my mind, the next time I died, I want to be happier with myself, with me, who I am. Doesn't matter what anybody in the world thinks about me, because you die alone. There might be somebody there with you, but still, it's a personal thing. So I wanted to feel better about my life. And so I didn't want to make my life about money any longer or any of that kind of stuff. I didn't want anything to do with business, even though I'm back in business. But I wanted to do something that I felt good about, that my life was worthwhile, that I was here, that I did something worthwhile. I wasn't here just to accumulate wealth and all of that craziness. So anyhow, I had been on the road for about 4 years, and I ended up down in Key Largo, Florida, which is a beautiful, down south of Miami, down in the Keys. And so I found an RV spot there, and I parked there for 4 or 5 months. And every night I could go out and look over the bay, the Gulf of Mexico. And it's beautiful to see all the beautiful sunsets. You had all the natural wildlife, the mangroves, and just nature. It was just pure nature. And the road down there is not very wide, so there's not a lot of houses, not a lot of cars, but there's a lot of nature. You're kind of out in the Gulf, and so anyhow, one night I was standing there beside the RV, feeding a water hose, feeding a little water to some manatee because they like fresh water, and then they all went away, and then I felt the sun was setting, and I felt like nature was talking to me, like the earth was talking to me. And again, this kind of comes from my Native American roots and stuff, because they always listen to everything goes on in nature. And so anyhow, but I had this urge come over me that, these words welled up in my mind, become an opposite charge. And I went in the house or into the RV, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper, become an opposite charge. To me, normally that would mean go charge them up like cows or whatever, move them along, charge them up. And then a few moments later, I had a second thought that status quo is the enemy. I had not a clue what that meant. I had nothing I could assign to that one. But anyhow, I wrote them both down, and then I kind of it was late, so I went to bed. I woke up in the morning, and I had this urge that I had to get up and go back west, back where I was from, and go back and do something. And I didn't know what, but I just was following this urge. And so I ended up leaving Florida, and drove all the way to LA, California, Los Angeles area. And I just said, I can't be here. So I went back to Tucson, wasn't feeling right. So that night I was heading up I thought I'd go up to Flagstaff, Arizona, which is a town like Montana where I grew up. And they have pine trees and snow. And it was just kind of like going home, And but on the way up, it got very late at night, and there was so I figured, well, I'll just stop and sleep somewhere and go up in the morning. Well, there was a little road sign and pointed to a town called Sedona, Arizona, and they had an RV spot, camping ground. So I pulled in there, and it was late, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and you don't check in, you just go ahead and park, and then you pay in the morning. And I stuck my head out the door in the morning. I looked up, and they had all these red rocks, big cliffs, and then they had this creek running, 10, 20 feet from the RV, called Oak Creek. And it was just like living in a national park. And I said, I'm not leaving here. This is perfect.
Yeah.
So I ended up staying there, and I stayed there for about 2 years. But in the process, there's not a lot to do in these small tourist type towns. But this town had a lot of art galleries, and I loved art. So it was kind of nice. So I would go around and visit the art galleries. And then one day I learned, this is getting to how I come to the ground.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's interesting. It's a very interesting story.
But anyhow, so we had all of this, all these art galleries, and some of them were high end, some of them were more tourist type. So anyhow, but there was an event coming to town that they were publicizing, and I knew the artist, and they were very famous. And I went to the owner of the art gallery, and I said, I know this person, and please invite me to your grand opening, all that kind of stuff. And I looked at the lighting and everything, the gallery and everything, and I just shook my head, and I said, this ain't going to work. But anyhow, so I ended up going back a couple of times and visiting with the owner, and I convinced her husband to let me come in and light the show for them. There was only a dozen pieces of art, but it was bigger stuff. And so finally they conceded to let me. So I went in there. They had like 200 lights up in the ceiling, and you had to have a baseball cap if you went in there to look at the art. So I took all the lights down. I took all the art down, cleaned it out. So all you had was just an empty gallery. Then they brought in the pieces of art from this exhibit, and I put them in there where they belong, and then lit them up one at a time. maybe with 20 light bulbs rather than 200.
Right.
And so all of the art looked more like the artist intended it to look. Not a lot of direct light, indirect lighting, and so on. And so when they had the show that evening, when the lady came in who owned the gallery, she walked in and she said, "I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life." And so that was good. But anyhow, that night, all of the other art galleries in town, they came to that show because it was a special show. And everybody said, "Who did the lighting? Who did the lighting?" Whatever. So after that, everybody wanted me to do their lighting. Well, these people don't have a lot of money. It's just, art. And so anyhow, I ended up starting a little small company called Best of Show. And all I did was light art galleries or exhibits and things like that. But so that got me working back with electrical.
Okay.
And so one day I was sitting on my desk and in this little tourist town, and I was trying to order some lighting equipment, and my computer kept glitching. I would type on it and then it would lock up. Then I'd have to shut it down, bring it back up, and then try to get my order. And finally, it was so bad that day, the static electricity. So I went and got a piece of copper tape, 1 inch wide, and I laid it across my desk, just laid it down, connected it with a little alligator clip to a ground, the ground in the outlet. Then anytime before I would touch my computer, I would go ahead and touch the tape. That would drain the static electricity or discharge the static electricity in my body and the environment. Then I could go type and my computer wouldn't go down. So that was cool.
How did you know that, though? Because you didn't study electrical engineering or whatever, did you? Or was it on the job?
Yeah. I spent 30 years grounding cable systems.
Right. Okay. That you learned, it was like trade. It was like you learned on the job, I assume.
Yeah, it was a trade. Yeah. Because everything had to be grounded in order to prevent charge,
right,
prevent static, and to prevent lightning and so on. So it was second nature to me. I just knew what to do. And so anyhow, after I got done, I went outdoors and sat on a bench, and up pulls a big tour bus. And it's full of, I think it was a Japanese tour group. They were all kind of short in stature, a little shorter in stature than most people. And they all had white Nike type tennis shoes on. And in my mind, I thought there must have been a sale at the strip mall down the road because everybody looked like they were wearing the same type of shoe. So this is a message from the universe, I guess. Anyhow, so I was sitting there, and for some reason, intuitively, I didn't think on it. It just popped into my head. I wonder if there was a consequence to humans no longer being naturally grounded. Now, most people wouldn't even think to ask that question because most people alive today have never been grounded. They've worn shoes. But anyhow, so I didn't know. And because I had just grounded out the static electricity on my computer, I went home that night, did the same thing in my home. I went in, I took a voltmeter, I went into my home and where I was parked, and I started measuring the electric fields and the static electricity in my home, especially in my bedroom. And I said, wow, there's all this electrical noise going on in my home, from TV sets, from just everything, the static electricity from you sitting on a couch or a foam bed or whatever. There's static electricity everywhere. And most people don't see it unless it's enough that you can feel the spark. And that's about 3,000 or 4,000 volts when it gets that high. So anyhow, I went back to the hardware store and I bought a roll of 3-inch wide metal aluminum duct tape. Laid it across my bed and taped it to the sheet. Took a wire, threw it out the window, connected it to a ground rod that I had put in the earth. Had a voltmeter, and so I could measure the voltage or the noise, the electrical noise, static, everything. I could measure all the stuff on my body. But as soon as I would put my hand on the tape that was grounded to the earth, it all disappeared. Well, that's just like a cable system. So what I was doing is I was grounding myself, but as soon as I ground myself, then it's no longer measurable on my body. And I thought, wow, this is interesting because I don't think anybody knows this is here. In the communications world, we know we have to keep everything electrically clean. But in the living environments, nobody even knows it's there. Nobody would even think. And then I got to thinking a little bit more, and I realized, well, the body's electrical first. Everything in the body's electrical first, chemical second. You have to have electrons moving around in order for molecules, and whatever. But but we are electrical people, and we're not run. You don't plug us in and run us like a battery or anything. But everything in our body functions with electromagnetic pulses, and like your brain waves, your muscles, your metabolism, everything. And so I didn't really understand any of it. I just knew these things. So but anyhow, that night I went ahead and just laid down on the tape and had the voltmeter in my hand, and the voltage went away. And I was like 54 years old. I had skied for 30 years. I was a cowboy. I had done everything dumb you could ever do in your life to hurt yourself. But anyhow, I had a lot of aches and pains. And so to go to sleep at night, sometimes I'd have to take Advil or whatever. And but anyhow, this night I just was playing with the voltmeter. And the next thing I knew, it was morning. I had fallen asleep. The voltmeter was laying right by my side, and I didn't move all night long. And I woke up in the morning and I said, whoa, there's something going on here because I don't sleep. And so I got up and I played around with it a little bit. And then I did a couple more nights, same thing. And then a couple of friends that I had met in Sedona, I was telling them what I was doing. And one of them said, well, I've got all kinds of aches and pains that never, I think he said, I've never slept or whatever, something like that. And then he had a lot of aches and pains also. But anyhow, so a couple of days later, he comes back and he says, this thing really works. And he said, do you think it could have anything to do with my arthritis? I said, I don't think so. He says, well, my arthritis pain has gone way down. And I said, then all of a sudden I recognized that my pain that I normally had to take the Advil was gone. And so here's this mystery. How come I don't know about this? How come nobody ever told me about this? How come pain goes away when we're grounded? And so I started looking around. Back then we had AOL, but nothing really as far as the internet. This was in the 90s. And I would go on Nexus Lexis, which is a data retrieval system, so you could go do search. But I couldn't find anything that suggested grounding the body would do anything to improve sleep or to reduce pain. And so then I ended up going down to University of Arizona, looking at their library down there, couldn't find anything. About a month later, I said, okay, I've had enough. This is real. I got to figure it out. So I drove out to UCLA. I figured these guys are smart. They know everything. So, and they do, I'm not putting them down at all. Yeah. Nobody knew anything about this then. But anyhow, so I drove out there and I told them what I was doing. And they said, you expect us to believe somebody's going to drive a nail in the ground, tie a wire around it, and then go tie it around somebody's toe? They're going to sleep better? They said, get out of here. Get out of here. You're nuts. But anyhow, so we started joking around a little bit. I learned we spent about an hour and a half talking to each other that day. I learned that they knew nothing about environmental electrical. And I learned that I knew nothing about biology. So we were talking Greek. But anyhow, so they said we'd have to have more information. And in order to do a study, it would cost millions of dollars and take years. And there's no assurance it would even get published. And I said, well, that's crazy. This is too important. Nobody can sleep. and everybody's got pain.
Right.
So I ended up hiring a couple of the kids from the students to help me design a study. So that we went out and we grounded 60 people. 30 of them were really grounded, 30 of them were placebo grounded. And then we monitored, or the nurse monitored I think they were grounded for like 30 days or 6 weeks. So the nurse would interview them before and after, and then they would, so the grounded subjects all reported improved sleep and reduced pain. And then they also started talking about the PMS issues not manifesting, and TMJ disappearing, and all these weird things that we weren't even asking. These are just anecdotal notes from the subjects. And so then all of a sudden, well, now we had a little more evidence. It was, even though it was anecdotal, but that allowed me to find a doctor, a researcher. And then we went out and did a second study where we measured cortisol, because cortisol is your stress hormone. And so we took and had them chew a little salivate type thing every 4 hours for 24 hours, froze them, sent them to a lab. Then 6 weeks later, we did it again. And then we took the profiles before grounding and after grounding. And you could see that before grounding, everybody's circadian cortisol profile rhythms or secretion profiles was like spaghetti. It was all over the place. Nobody was uniform. But 6 weeks later, when we did it, then they were all uniform. They all were lowest at midnight until about 4 a.m. At 4 a.m., they would skyrocket up in the morning. And then they would be the highest around 6. Then you get up in the morning and then it kind of depletes all day long. And it's the lowest at midnight. And then it goes, and then it recycles again. So everybody, even though these subjects didn't know each other, didn't even live close to each other, they all synchronized. They all went into the same pattern. So the thing that was most interesting was all we did was connect them to the earth. We grounded them to the earth. And the issue was more so that what happens at 4 o'clock in the morning? There's no daylight. There's no environmental cueing mechanisms. And yet at 4 o'clock, everybody's cortisol starts to skyrocket. We did eventually figure that out, how that happens. It has to do with where the sun is and the noise from the sun as it's coming up in the morning. I mean, there's resonant frequencies. Increases the amplitude of some of the frequencies and so on. So we figured that one out. But what we realized was that the human body, dances to the rhythms and the frequencies of the earth. But more importantly, what we were searching for was how does grounding reduce pain? Nobody knew. This is back in 2000. And it wasn't until 2004. We'd been doing work, and I had researchers. We had been doing studies and everything. And we had been, it was 2004, and Ritger and the boys back at Boston, Mass. had come up with this article, or this, and it was in Time magazine. There's a front cover, and it showed the body in flames, and it said inflammation. And further down it said, and before then, nobody had heard of the word inflammation, not in the human health world. So anyhow, what they were implying was that you don't have cancer, you don't have lupus, you don't have arthritis, you don't have any of these modern health, these named inflammatory type health disorders, cardiovascular disease, all of them. They said what you have is chronic inflammation. And as that inflammation increases over a period of time, depending on your lifestyle and your environment and your mental, those things are going to influence and exacerbate the inflammation. So some people will develop cardiovascular disease, some people will develop cancer, some will develop this or that or whatever. But anyhow, so that was all interesting, but still, it did not explain why grounding reduced pain, improved sleep, and then what we learned rather quickly, reduced inflammation. And being a cowboy, I have all this to draw on. You know, in the animal world, cancer rarely, if ever, manifests. The wild animals, they don't have cardiovascular disease, lupus, MS, autism, cancer, any of these inflammation-related health disorders. On the other hand, the animals who live indoors with their owners, 50% of them die from cancer, just like their owners. So all of a sudden we have an environmental, I mean, this is environmental. This isn't, you know, it's what you're eating, what you're doing, what, and all those things play, but it's really something in the environment. So then I'm just going to bounce around here for a bit.
No, it's okay. This is so interesting.
Yeah. But so anyhow, what we learned was 1960, we invented plastics, the synthetic material. 1960. That's only, 60 years ago. We invented these synthetic plastics. And the first thing we did was put them on soles of shoes. Because now everybody could afford shoes because they were inexpensive. And you didn't have to worry about them getting wet. You could go walk in the mud or the rain, where if you had leather shoes, you either had to go barefoot. If it was raining, you had to go barefoot and take them off and carry them so they didn't get wet. But anyhow, shoes were expensive and you only wore them on purpose. But again, I'm from Montana. I wasn't living in New York City at the time. but anyhow, so all of this kind of started to make some sense. And then one day I was reading a paper about what causes inflammation. And they were talking about the oxidative burst. If you have a pathogen in your body or some tissue damage, the immune system's going to send a neutrophil over, or neutrophil is going to come over, swim over. And if there's a damaged cell or pathogen, it's kind of a jelly type cell. It'll wrap itself around the pathogen, and then it releases what we call reactive oxygen species. The word reactive means that it's strong enough to rip chrome off of a bumper. So I mean, it's oxidative. So anyhow, that's how the immune system destroys pathogens. It rips the electrons from the pathogen, and that destroys the pathogen. That's how the immune system, the innate immune system, works. It's bizarre, but that's the way it works. But so anyhow, then I recognize that, well, when I'm grounding people, what I'm doing is I'm connecting them to the earth. Then they are absorbing free electrons from the earth equal to the earth, because the earth is infinitely large. You're infinitely small, but when you connect the two together, then you're going to absorb and equalize with the earth. So now your body absorbs these free electrons through the feet, bare feet. And what we learned is you can't have inflammation in the body when you are grounded. So what we realized was that when we started wearing shoes, then we lost our ground, we lost our connection with the planet, we lost touch with the earth, and now our bodies become positively charged because of these reactive oxygen species. And so you don't build up inflammation. Well, you build up damage, oxidative damage, the damage that these oxidants do. So anyhow, if you have a radical that is ungrounded, within just a few nanoseconds, it's going to rip an electron from something nearby and damage it. Then another neutrophil comes over, tries to clean that up, and then all of a sudden you have a chain reaction, an uncontrolled fire, and that's what we call inflammation, body on fire. The body is inflamed with oxidation from radicals. So as soon as you ground the body, then the body absorbs all these free electrons from the earth, and they reduce the radicals and prevent any further damage to tissue. And so the body returns to normal. So oftentimes you hear all of this referred to as autoimmune diseases, and inflammation-related health disorders, an autoimmune disease, meaning the immune system is no longer functioning as designed. And so by grounding the body, you restore that natural state, that grounded state, and then the immune system can clean up the mess that's been created by the inflammation. Then it can go back to restoring and maintaining natural health.
Okay,
in short.
Well, no, but so here's the thing. So that brings up really like a lot of good questions for me. That was an excellent and thorough explanation, and it does bring up questions for me. So I've done a lot of shows with a bunch of different functional medicine people on different types of autoimmune disease. And basically most of them will bring it back to gut health and stress and things like that. So are you telling me that we can change autoimmune disease through grounding alone? Or obviously we should try to focus on diet as well? And I'm going to tell you an interesting story in a minute as well.
Okay. Well, you have to answer this question. What causes inflammation in the body? What is the single one thing that causes inflammation? You have to have a dysfunctioning immune system. The immune system is no longer functioning as it was designed. If your immune system is functioning properly, as it was, as God intended, as however you want to say it, then you can't have inflammation in a human body. It's against the laws of physics. You can't have charge in a grounded amplifier. You can't have charge or inflammation in a grounded conductive body like a human body, a cat or a dog or any other animal or any other thing. So the problem here is 1960 we lost our ground. And that's when autoimmune diseases, diabetes, lupus, MS, autism, cancer, all of these cardiovascular, they're all growing exponentially still to this day. We have the best universities, the best doctors, we have the best of everything, but yet all the health disorders are still continually growing. So something is amiss. Well, autoimmune disease is exactly what it is. The immune system is something that works automatically. Doesn't need to be told what to do. It for millions of years, it knows exactly what to do. Oxidize pathogens.
Right.
And so if you lose that protection and the immune system can no longer reduce these remaining radicals after an oxidative burst, then that is where inflammation comes from. You cannot have inflammation in a grounded body. If you stay grounded, that's the end of your inflammation. If you have MS, lupus, and you have a flare going on, I can take an EKG patch like you would and just stick it on the hand and connect the cord to a ground. And within 15 minutes, first of all, the pain is going to come way down, because what we're doing is now we're pouring, when you ground the body, now the body is absorbing free electrons from the earth. And those are instantly going to, if there's a positive charge, they're going to instantly, speed of light, neutralize positive charge. So they're reducing the radicals that are eating up the myelin sheath, that are oxidizing the myelin sheath, which is what MS is. So as soon as the body starts absorbing these free electrons, then the pain comes way down, stops. So that means the fire is out. Now, there's going to be some residual pain. That's going to be what you call healing pain, but it's not that hot, burning Vicodin type pain. So then the immune system will slowly go about cleaning that up. And then the blood viscosity normalizes. When you're grounded, the little red blood cells, they all absorb and equalize with the earth. I think there's a study at the Earthing Institute.net, the blood viscosity study, where as you know, within 15 minutes to an hour of grounding, all the red blood cells, you increase the amount of electrons on each red blood cell by 270%. So now they are more negative, and now they repel each other. And now they can get in and out of the capillary single file and oxygenate the tissue, and prevent, clean up the cells, clean up everything. So this system we have, this body we have, and I like to say it another way sometimes too. Your immune system is the most important system in the body. It's what got us here. And if you go back, you can think back, it's like the first Homo sapiens was, I think, walking around 150,000 years ago, something like that, I think. And so that means that I have somewhere between 7,500 and 10,000 grandmothers in a straight line. Their genes are my genes. Together, they all got me here, this body anyway. And they didn't have any of the modern things that we had. All they had was nature, common sense. And other than infectious disease, acute, war and famine and so on, they had the same life expectancy we have today. And a lot of people may argue with that.
Well, listen, in the times of the Bible, they were living 900 years, so.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, so what I'm going to tell you is, a lot of people go, do this, take whatever to help. If it's going to help gut problem, first of all, you've got to stop the inflammation. You have to stop the fire before you try to repair, whatever. But if you don't stop the fire, then it's going to just be reoccurring, and eventually it will. I could go on for hours on this subject, especially with women, because, women, for instance, 90% of all drugs are taken by women. 90% of all pharmaceuticals are taken by, nutraceuticals are taken by women. 90% of the visits to a doctor are by women. Now, what is this all about? Okay, first of all, women are the caregivers. They take care of the health of the family. Men, no pain, no gain. That's a whole different world. Don't even go there.
Yeah, we're not going to go there now. Yeah.
But anyhow, the moms, they're about taking care of each other and taking care of the family and whatever. And they're very sensitive. A woman, we learned that women, are much more sensitive than men. That means that if there's somebody drops a fork, their cortisol is going to spike. Okay, a man, nah, big deal, whatever. Right. But anyhow, so women, their cortisol, their fight or flight system is chronically elevated. They're chronically producing cortisol. This cortisol eventually creates anxiety, irritability, and it can lead to a host of other things. But anyhow, so they're more sensitive. They have to be, because of the children, because of everything that's in their life. So their body, they have more cortisol running amok in their bodies. And that creates pain, anxiety, irritability, creates inflammation. And the list goes on and on and on. So when you ground a woman, the first thing that happens is, she calms down. You stop the fight or flight response. And then the body, you can actually feel the body start to cool down. And you can do this by going outdoors, putting your bare feet on the ground.
Perfect. I was going to ask you, practically speaking. But
no, we are going to.
Okay, good. But how somebody, let's say, that has an autoimmune disease that really needs to be grounded 24/7. How do you get them grounded 24/7?
Well, see, these are the issues of the day.
Okay.
These are life. You have to, if you have an autoimmune, chronic autoimmune disorder, which most women do at some level, more so when they get older, then the only way you can keep the fire out is you have to get grounded and stay grounded. And the only way you know when the fire is out is when the pain goes away. You cannot have pain in the human body unless you have inflammation. You have to have inflammation first. Then that sends a message to the body that, hey, I'm on fire. Get me out of here. Put the fire out. Do something. Unfortunately, today we're trying to go take meds and so on for pain. But anyhow, so these are life choices, lifestyle, life changes that some women have to make. If you have lupus MS, just 20 years ago, when I would go work with someone who had MS, I remember I went to this one home one time. The doctor had just left, and he told her, he says, you need, you have MS. You're not going to. This doesn't get any better. It just gets worse. You need to go get a big TV set and one of those beds that goes up and down. And be comfortable and get comfortable, and I couldn't believe that. But anyhow, they didn't know what to do with autoimmune diseases, and they still, to a large degree, don't. Put them on steroids, and the steroids will suppress the immune system. Then that possibly creates other problems. And so what we're doing is we have to stop and think who we are. We are, I'm going to say my language, we are the earth up walking around. I mean, we come from the earth, we eat the earth, we breathe the earth, we drink the earth. And when we're all through it, everything, we go back to the earth. And what happens to spirit and all that other stuff, that's another set of questions. But as far as this living body and this health that we experience, we have to recognize who we are, where we came from, and what happened, how we lost our connection. We don't eat good food anymore like we used to, as much as we should anyway. We certainly don't ground. We certainly don't do it. We don't get, it's like we live in homes now. We don't even get our vitamin D. We have to buy a bottle of vitamin D to get our vitamin D because we put a roof over our head because we don't want to go out in the sunshine. Well, for millions of years, or maybe I'm exaggerating there, but for some huge amount of time, we lived in caves, lived in the earth, lived whatever, and we had sunshine naturally every day. We had fresh water every day. We had fresh food every day. And then we lived in harmony with the seasons, with the planets, with, the plants, and we just lived in harmony with nature. And we have broken all of that. And now if you have health disorder, if you have chronic health disorder, then you have to, first of all, stop the number one thing you have to do, you have to stop the fire no matter what. You have to stop the oxidation. You have to stop the inflammation. The only way that I know how to do that, and I spent 25 years working on it and probably $20 million on the research and so on, is you put your bare feet on the earth and keep them there until the pain goes away. That means the inflammation's gone. You go back in the house, and when the pain comes back up, go back outdoors, put your feet in the earth. Whatever you have to do. I mean, hopefully you have some green grass or some green or somewhere plants will grow so you can have a little moisture in the soil. Other than that, there's a challenge here. This is an inconvenient truth. That's what it is, because we have created these lifestyles that we have today, the way we consume the food we consume, just our habits, everything. It's one of those moments you have to stop, take a breath, and say, "Oh my God, what did we do to ourselves? And what do I have to do to fix it?" Especially a mom. I work primarily. 99% of the people we work with are female, and they're all moms taking care of their mom, or moms taking care of their daughters, and then taking care of their family as they go. But there's so many problems, and emotional and social, and just all the craziness in the world. And I don't have answers for most of it. I do the best, like everybody else, to cope with what, do the best I can. I keep myself busy trying to help out and that helps me feel better. But anyhow, we have to take these young moms and these next generation. We have to educate them. We have to teach them everything we can, and then we have to try to help them determine the things that are necessary to maintain health. Because health is the most important thing. If you don't have health, your life is a mess, and everybody else's life. It's like now here in the U.S., I'll just throw a couple things out. Here in the U.S., 80% of all women sleep alone. Okay, now, we're social animals. Why do they sleep alone? Well, the women are in too much pain. They have fibromyalgia, they have lupus, they have this, they have that. And so the relationship isn't conducive. The husband gets mad half the time they leave, or they don't, whatever. So we're destroying everything. Our relationships, everything. So we have to stop this. And you can only do it one person at a time. Somebody has to say, I'm going to put my feet out on the earth. If this works, I'm going to, take the next step, whatever it is. And it isn't that grounding is the answer. It's just grounding is it's foundational. You are from the earth. You are always been connected to the earth. You need to reconnect and maintain that electrical rhythms and that electrical harmony and that grounded state that prevents oxidative stress, that prevents inflammation. Then you need to learn to calm your mind, and that's something everybody needs to work on, because everybody gets upset about nothing, makes a big ado about nothing. They need to find silence and peace and help put their hands to work, helping each other and doing things. But a lot of the nonsense, because you're driving cortisol. If you drive cortisol and if you're not grounded, that's creating inflammation. But so most of our issues they're as much mental as they are related to physical or food or all of these things. You have to find yourself. You have to find who you are and find that place where you need to be in order to be happy. Because health is your body's most natural state. If you don't have health, then something you're thinking about, something you're doing is interfering with your immune system's ability to maintain health. You're ungrounded, you're living in a chronically elevated sympathetic state, got too much noise going on in your mind, that's causing cortisol. I could go on and on and on.
So, well, I do want to tell you this, that first of all, I agree with you, because I will tell you that I'm a physical therapist, and I would say 80% of my patients are women, and that I have an expression with many women, and that's you need to be selfish with your health, because most of these people who there's so much emotional overload, they're always taking care of everybody else. They come last, everything else has to be done. And I'm really trying to educate them and teach them that you're here, you're in pain, you're sick. You have to come first. You have to deal with you first, and then you can go help the other people. So you can't get away with saying, I'm not going to do my exercises, or I'm not going to do this or that, because, this child needs me and this grandchild needs me. And you can't take care of anybody else if you don't take care of yourself. So I do try to educate them that way. And I wanted to tell you an interesting story before we go into a little bit more specifically how different ways people can ground. And that's that I have somebody, she's going to know I'm talking about her. She listens to this podcast all the time. And she had a benign brain tumor about 1.5 years ago. And when she first came to me the first time, it was probably about maybe 9 months after it. And she's one of these incredibly nice, wonderful people who is always on for every single one of her kids and her grandchildren. And she really had a lot of struggle. There was a lot of she's menopausal, a lot of menopause, a lot of hormone issues, just a lot of stuff going on. So we kind of left the physical therapy for a while. I asked her to deal with some of the other things. She started dealing with them. She started seeing a functional medicine person. She came back to me, I don't remember how long ago, a few months ago, and she still was feeling terrible. She still was feeling exhausted. She still, she was working with a functional medicine person, working with an acupuncturist. She was starting to work for me. So we kind of try to take it slowly. And one of the things I said to her was, I want you every single morning to go out in the early morning sunlight, and I want you to ground. I want you to take off your shoes, and I want you to spend 15 or 20 minutes in that, like in the sun, but grounding to the earth. So she started doing that. She was continuing to work with acupuncture. She was starting to do my exercises. She was, in addition, like, working with a functional medicine person, changing her diet, changing hormonal things. But really, I mean, honestly, it was after she started the grounding that about 2 weeks later was the first time she came in and she said, you know what? I'm not so tired. Like, I'm feeling more energetic. I'm feeling better. And to me, it was really the grounding and the early morning sun and the grounding that really started. I mean, she was doing the right thing. So somebody else could say, well, she was doing a million things, but I really think it was the grounding. And it's something that I've really started to get a lot of women to start doing. Now, I'm a big believer in barefoot and barefoot shoes. I've had 3 different barefoot experts on this podcast.
Cool.
Am I grounded in my barefoot shoes? If they're not these earth runners that I'm wearing with that grounding plug, and does this grounding plug work? Maybe that's a separate question.
It does if you stand right. It does if you stand right, and so on. The main thing is put your bare foot on the earth and solve the problem.
Yeah. So it's just not practical to always walk around barefoot.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, but as much whenever you can do, for sure. But if you have an earthen floor, don't wear shoes in your home if you don't have to.
Yeah,
like the saltile tile and things like that. And but the shoes are problematic. There's millions of companies knocking off and making all these grounding things everywhere, and half of it doesn't work. Some of it you can make work, but like putting a rivet in the sole of a shoe. If you are standing so the rivet is touching the earth, then that's fine. At that moment, you're grounded. But they need to ground the whole sole of the shoe and make it more like the foot. You need to replicate the foot. But all of that stuff's coming on. I think last year we sold and gave away nearly 100,000 pair of grounded flip-flops. We did that just to get people used to the idea. Go out and try these and see if they work, if you like them, because then you can feel the pain drain away. You're just walking, and that's what people need. It's like everything we've done. Our company is really a research and development company. Mm-hmm. What we did is I took the time, because I was retired, whatever, and did the research and promoted all these studies. The Earthing Institute, there's like 30 plus peer-reviewed published studies. Plus we have 30, 40 peer-reviewed papers that are published. And altogether, they just suggest very simply that, you can't have inflammation in a grounded body. And then we try to educate people. And everybody has to do their own experiments. They have to come to terms with it. If you get grounded and your pain starts to come down and your energy starts to come up, there's a message. That's nature. That's health. Health, and again, I can't say it loud enough. Health is free. It's your most natural state. If you do not have health, then it's your shoes or this or what you're thinking or what you're eating, all these things. But if your immune system is compromised, you can't have health. You can do everything that functional medicine and every other kind of medicine tells you to do. You can do all of it, but it's not going to put the fire out and keep it out.
So can we talk about bare feet on the earth? I know this sounds stupid, but what constitutes earth? Concrete? Obviously the beach, the grass is the best. So many people today have synthetic grass that actually has concrete underneath.
Right. So the synthetic grass is not conductive. You might as well stay in the house.
Interesting. Okay.
The only thing that is conductive is earth, bare earth, dirt, sand, any patch of earth that has anything growing in it, like grass or flowers, or anything where plant life can survive and flourish. That would be good grounding soil. Beyond that, this is the challenge. You can take a bath at night. And as long as your cold water is generally connected to the earth.
Really?
Yeah, your cold water pipes coming into your home. If you don't have, if you have the older type that have the drains are all cast iron. And so they're conductive, they're grounded. So when you run a hot bath and you soak in a bathtub, then you are grounded because by osmosis. Taking a shower, make sure the cold water is running at the same time. The hot water may not be grounded, but the cold water always is. And beyond that, I keep telling people, you have to find ways in your home that you can ground. In some places, you have the fireplaces. The hearths are made of stone. Oftentimes, they're grounded because they're sitting on earth. Some of the flooring, as long as it's a saltile tile and not a glass tile, they would be semi-grounded. And sometimes, like I've told people here that live in areas they don't have yards and so on, I said, you have to find 2 square feet that you can build a sandbox.
That's what I was going to ask, if you could put like a dirt. Yes.
You can, as long as it's on concrete, bare concrete, the soil. If you built a 2x4, square little box and put sand in it, 3 or 4 inches, and then put a little moisture in it, water it down, and sit there with your feet in. It's going to be life-changing for you.
Okay, I'm on a 3rd floor apartment.
Yes.
So if I build a sandbox on my porch, right, of my 3rd floor apartment, that would be considered grounding, even though I'm not directly connected to the earth, or no?
Is the patio concrete?
So the patio is stone tile.
Okay. Is it stone? Is it stone with concrete grout or plastic grout?
No, definitely concrete.
Okay. So, and the rest of the building is concrete?
So the buildings here are stone. Everything in Israel pretty much is made of stone, especially in this area. Stone and concrete. It's not wood. It's not.
No, and you'll have rebar, metal rebar.
Yeah, we have metal poles
in the stone.
Yeah.
So you can experiment. Stone is semiconductive. It's better if it has moisture. But if you have a sandbox, build yourself a little sandbox and put the sand in it and then just water it down so it maintains a little bit of moisture. And then before you ground at night, just pour another little cup of water or something on it. But anyhow, so the moisture builds up. The concrete will hydrate a little bit, so that moisture will build up. Yeah, there's something there. I think you can do that. I think you're probably more grounded there than you might think. If everything is stone.
Yeah, everything really is stone.
Yeah, it's earth and materials. So you could tell, I've grounded a lot of people in Israel, and I know a lot of them are not grounded well because of their homes, the way the homes are built in the glass tile, the shiny glass tiles.
Oh,
they're not conductive.
I might have marble on the floors here. The floors here, right. I think, are actually marble.
Pure
but
marble
underneath is the stone, because it's like.
Yeah, but if it's pure marble, that's fine too.
Oh, okay. It might be.
Pure marble is stone.
Speak to my parents, right? Interesting. Yeah.
So is your parents' health pretty good?
Thank God, because I get a lot of my information because my parents have always been. My father is a doctor who's also got into alternative medicine about 25 years ago, ended up studying acupuncture, craniosacral therapy. And they are at the forefront, cutting edge. My father was grounding years ago. He'd heard of grounding. Oh, cool. My parents use a sauna. No, thank goodness. My parents are 78 years old and in pretty good health. And they'll be excited to listen to this episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm 80, so say hi.
Yeah. No, for sure. for sure.
But anyhow,
Right.
so they're indirectly grounded, incidentally grounded, whatever lifestyle they probably eat better than younger people, and so there's a lot of things contributed. One thing I want to say is any kind of functional medicine is important. I'm not taking anything away from any of that. All I'm trying to make a point is what is the real cause of inflammation? It's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you and the amount of cortisol you have in your body and so on. And the only way you can get rid of that inflammation is you have to ground it out. Our bodies are designed to use negative charge from the earth in order to reduce radicals and prevent damage to tissue. This is nature.
Right. So I wanted to just talk. I understand that you guys make things called grounding mats that you can plug in and put on your bed. So I want to hear a little about that. Like, what is the best way for people who want to try grounding that maybe can't walk around barefoot all day? I mean, I'd like them to, but.
Well, the same here. I'm barefoot right now, and I am most of the time. And so the mats that everybody uses, we sell millions of them. We developed them over a period of 20 years, maybe 25 years. We started out with silver and cotton and all kinds of things. We spent millions of dollars trying to develop these things. But the reason we had to develop them in the first place, we couldn't do our studies unless we had ground planes. We had to be able to ground people and then measure the, all the biofeedback and all of the vitals and blood and everything, and so on. So we had to ground people, and in the process, the subjects, they all wanted the mats that we used in our studies. They wanted to keep them, or they wanted to take them home, or the researchers wanted them. And then everybody came back and started wanting them for their grandparents or their mother or whoever. And then as time went on, all of a sudden it turned into a demand. And we were not a production company. We weren't anything. So what we did is we set about trying to develop products that people could incorporate into their life. They could ground them when they had no other options. And so what we ended up with, we started out with cotton, silver, and rubber, and all kinds of things. But as time went on, none of those lasted long enough. They were too expensive. And it was hard for people to figure out whether they were working or not. So what we designed was a carbon material that, if you can imagine like a mattress pad or something, but except this is very thin, like a sheet, and it's pure black. It's carbon. Carbon is the number one molecule on the planet. And we're carbon units and so on. But anyhow, it's basic carbon. And carbon is conductive. So what we do is it's made into a film, and then it's applied to a special fabric that has a little bit of conductive in the back. And in the early days, we didn't know what to do, but one day we realized that people don't comply with anything. A doc, you being a doc, people aren't going to do anything for very long. Most of them won't even, finish up a prescription, for antibiotics or whatever. But anyhow, the point is, we said we need to do something that doesn't interfere with their normal day-to-day lives. They can't be expected to do anything because they won't do it. And so we ended up saying, okay, let's make a mattress or a sheet that we can put on a mattress that is conductive, connect it to the ground cord or to a ground rod driven outdoors. And all they have to do at night is come home. Put it on the bed one time, come home, and they can put a sheet over it, or they can sleep directly on it, depending on how hot, a lot of people who have their health is very compromised. They sleep directly on it because they feel so much better, so much quicker. But anyhow, you just put a sheet on it because there's plenty of humidity in first from the perspiration and from the sheet holds and becomes conductive. So the carbon is your ground plane, meaning it's the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So you put a sheet over it, then go lay down on it, and you're going to be grounded within nanoseconds.
Oh.
So now you don't have to do anything except come home, lay down, go to sleep, do what you normally do. That works. And it's the only thing that works. We have other things for patches and acute situations and so on. But the thing that works best is the sleep mat, because now you can be grounded 8 hours a day or whatever, and let nature take care of and prevent the inflammation. And most of your recovery happens during sleep. So you don't want inflammation in your body when you're sleeping. So you ground out the inflammation, then the immune system can go through its, and the hormone cascades and everything, and return you to normal. And you get up in the morning, you got more energy. You're ready to go.
So, okay. So if people want that for night, do you also sell grounding shoes?
I think we're probably pretty well out right now, but we do have, we have the grounded flip-flops. We used to give them away, but anyhow, the shoes are coming out. We do have some Birkenstock type sandals that will be available sometime, probably in 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
And those are rugged and they're really good. The tennis type shoes, they're a little more problematic. They're expensive, and then they have to put silver in them, and the moisture from the body salts in the perspiration oxidize the silver, and so the silver loses its conductivity. So, but anyhow, the barefoot is best, and if you can't, then these carbon things that are made of carbon are best. And they're the least expensive, and they last the longest. The mats that we have now will last 5 years without even thinking about it, where the sheets we had would only last, sometimes not even 6 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
yeah, go on.
No, go. But anyhow, so we are forever developing things. We have grounded yoga mats for the yoga community. We have work mats that are grounded. We have different things, but again, what we do is primarily we do the research and development, and then we give them to other people or license them to other people. We do sell them, of course, and what money we make, we always put back into what we do. But so that's all helpful. But beyond that, I think everybody needs to become a little bit of a experimenter, pioneer, and figure this out, because everybody's lives are different, and everybody's homes are a little different, and their lifestyles and so on. So you just have to find what works, but you have to drain the inflammation out of your body. And so I've told women, and I say it every time, I usually tell different stories about coyotes and all this, how the immune system works and how the fight or flight system works and so on. But in the wild, it's not a problem, because they are always grounded, and they ground it out, after the chase. But if you spend a day working and doing whatever you do, and then you go home and crawl in bed at night and you don't ground out this inflammation, you're going to have aches and pains. You're not going to sleep well. You're going to have anxiety, irritability, and it gets worse. But if you'll just go outdoors and put your bare feet in the earth, bury your feet in the earth for 30 minutes, it's going to drain all of the inflammation related to the cortisol out. Your nervous system's going to calm down. Your sympathetic's going to calm down. Your parasympathetic is going to come up. You're going to feel better. And then you can go sleep and sleep better. But if your health is compromised, then you need to consider these mats. And I think they sell for $59, $69, low end, up to 100, 200. And they have all the equipment that you need to ground your bed, or they have testers that come with them, so they're working. But yeah, we're more.
Are you plugging it in though? Is it being plugged into an outlet?
You can plug it into the electrical ground.
Because the electrical outlet is grounded, right?
Yeah, there's one leg of the electrical, it is connected to the earth.
Right. So
So
you
that's
just
one
plug
way
it
to
into
do-
that particular hole.
Yes. Yes. And then, or you can use ground rods and just stick it out the window and close the window on it. A little wire.
So you
and
do
just,
need something connecting that mat. So either through the electrical socket or through, you know,
yeah.
mine
You
would
can
be a
connect-
30-foot drop. So I guess it would have to be through the electrical socket, but yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, in many cases, you have to use the electrical.
Okay. So is that
Now,
a
the only-
problem as far as the EMFs from electricity
Yeah.
and stuff, or?
Well, you know what? I just want to say this because everybody, especially guys, they love to go get these meters and get in front of women and say, look, you're going to die. You're going to get this. You're going to whatever. Because these EMFs are going to go through your body and cause a heart attack. And they're going to, and they make cows dance and they do, it goes on and on. But anyhow, I've been in their business, for 60 years, 30 years,
Right.
grounding electrical equipment and systems, and 30 years grounding bioelectrical systems, meaning human bodies. I've never ever heard of a person ever suffering from EMF exposure. I've never heard of anybody ever died from EMF and so on. And these people are all very misguided. And I hate to say this publicly because I don't want to interfere with anybody's living and all that kind of stuff. But here's the problem. People who are electrically sensitive, who can feel electric fields or static electricity or, the wind or noise bothers them or, any one of 100 things, these people are suffering from exhausted adrenals. Their parasympathetic is no longer functioning. So now the sympathetic nervous system is going to forever do what it always does. It's going to respond to noise, electric fields. It's going to respond to emotions, and then each time it does, it's going to cause a little squirt of cortisol. Normally, the parasympathetic, when you're young, it has enough resources that it can dampen that response, the fight or flight response, and like in nature, let you cope with what the situation is, and then you deal with it. But today, women are chronically they're living in a chronically elevated sympathetic state. The sympathetic nervous system is going in constantly, thinking whatever. The parasympathetic, which works with hormones, and it becomes exhausted adrenals. So it no longer functions. So now these electric fields and every other thing in noise, whatever. So now the parasympathetic is no longer functioning. So now you feel overdrive. You can feel more energy. You can feel more stimulation. You can feel more anger. You can feel all these things. So it has nothing to do with electric fields. You can eliminate all the electric fields in your house. That is not going to stop or repair your sympathetic nervous system. So the problem is not EMFs and all this nonsense that everybody's chasing. The problem is restoring the adrenals. Now, how do you do that? First of all, you got to realize that you have a fight or flight system and it's trying to save you from the environment and everything that's going on. But so you need to recognize what this is, and then you need to come to terms with it, and then find the things in life. Most people spend their lives running around mad and angry and whatever. This is all fight or flight stuff, and it all this is the foundation of a lot of this inflammation, because something's creating that inflammation. Grounding gets rid of it, prevents it from damaging tissue. But what's creating this inflammation? What's creating that is what you're thinking about. What's eating you? What you're mad at? Who you're mad at? What, there's 100 things. And like in MS and lupus and all of the people like that, especially a lot of the breast cancer ladies and so on, I asked them, what happened in your life before this manifest? And most of the time they can't tell you right away, but all of a sudden they'll say, oh my God, I never thought about that. my mother died, and I just never could get over that. Or I lost a child, I lost a husband, I lost a home, I lost my job, I lost whatever. They go into this chronically elevated sympathetic state, blow out the adrenals, and here they are, mad now EMFs, or now it's this, or it's a cell tower way down the road there. No, it's not the cell tower. It's nothing. It's your adrenals. So
that would explain why some people get sick next to that cell tower and some people don't.
Yeah,
right. The ones with the blown out adrenals are going to be the ones that are going to tend to get sicker. The ones who are functioning.
But the cell tower had nothing to do with it. It was just it was at the scene of the accident, at the adrenal accident.
Right.
And that's what everybody gets backwards. It's like inflammation. They say, well, somebody's got this problem, this problem, this problem. Well, we need to fix this. We need to fix it. I say, first of all, the problem is feeding the fire. What's causing the fire is you're ungrounded. So you've got to ground, stabilize the system, put the fire out, let the immune system try to restore things, and then try to do as much as you can to stay grounded as often as you can so that you can keep your immune system functioning. But this is about the immune system. It's about our environment. And I sometimes I want to scream because we're all so trained and ingrained to think, well, it's something out here that's causing this. It is not. It is inside.
You're basically saying that the root cause of the problem is not being grounded. That if you treat the root cause, you'll get rid of most of the noise. And then maybe if there's something else, then the diet will be more successful or whatever else it is. But the root cause is the not being grounded.
Yeah. You'll have better outcomes with everything if you ground people.
Well, I have to say that it doesn't sound that difficult to do. It could be little to no cost. If you want to get a sheet, you can. But if you can get outside and get your bare feet on the ground, it's not, you're not telling anybody to buy expensive equipment, except that a grounding mat sounds like a great, inexpensive, low-cost thing that can't hurt. It can only help.
No, that's what this is a mission. This isn't about making money.
Yeah, no, I know it's not. No, I know it's not. No, I know. Meaning that's what I'm trying to say is that you basically come up with something where you need to be reimbursed for the cost of your materials, but basically there's no reason not to do it because it's going to help and it certainly can't hurt and it's low cost and it's easy. But there's a lot of other things and a lot of other people who are incredibly brilliant minds, but a lot of these things are very, very expensive. And you're basically saying that if we start with the grounding, you're probably going to knock out most of the things anyways.
Yeah, you're going to normalize the immune system because everything is immune related. If your immune system's functioning, you have health. You can't be sick if your immune system is not compromised. Your immune system has to be compromised for anything to go wrong in the body. You can't have cancer unless you screw up your immune system.
Right. Okay. Well, I have to say everything you're saying is fascinating and I like it. I love nature. I love sunshine. I love the earth. I love being outside and I love what you have to say. So let me ask you, just turning around the tables a little bit, what does spirituality mean to you?
What is spirituality to me? I have most of my life, fortunately, spent a lot of time in nature. And there's something about being in sync with all living things. I'm talking about plants, animals, nature, the planet itself, and having this universal energy force. I don't know what it is, but I know it comes through me a lot. But I like to tune into that and be one with everything and everyone. And that makes me feel whole. And that's my spirit is being connected to everybody and everything else. Because I think I don't have the words, but that oneness that is there that we just have to quiet our minds and quiet our being. And every living thing on the earth, we're all one, we're all connected.
It makes a lot of sense because
yeah.
through the earth, we're kind of all connected. The same way we might say in physical therapy, through the fascia of the body, every part of your body is connected. So through the earth, if we're grounded, we're going to be connected to each other.
Yes.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So what's the best place to find you if people want to find you, find the Earthing Institute? What's the best place to find you guys and to get more information and to get products? And
well, the earthing.com, that's where they have all the products. And they always have a lot of very inexpensive products and packages. Mm-hmm. And we keep them low so that so they're affordable and all that kind of stuff. So for that kind of thing, that's the place to go. But if you want more information, the earthinginstitute.net has all of the published studies and all of the papers. And then you have PubMed, which all of the studies are on PubMed also. Mm-hmm. So you can just find them anywhere, Google anything with any disease, and put the word inflammation on it, and then add grounding, and you'll find that there's a lot of stuff out there. But the thing I would recommend, the Earthing movie, which is an hour and 15-minute movie. It's free on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And then there's a little 15-minute trailer. It's called Down to Earth. That one's been seen by a few 100 million people around the world.
Oh, wow. I'm going to link it.
Yeah. And, but anyhow, but those, there's lots of resources out there. You have the internet. There's a dozen or more different groups that Earthing this, Earthing that, whatever. Earthing Insiders and Earthing Institute where we spend all of our energy. But everybody is in love with earthing. Everybody, they experience it and they say, oh my God, I got to ground my mom. And so that way we know and we don't have to market it a lot. It's really about education. It's about women to get take their shoes off, put their feet in the sand and stay there. And then all of a sudden the color comes up, the demeanor changes, they smile, they feel better. It's all about feeling better.
I like it. I'm about anything that will get people in their bare feet and out of their terrible shoes. So this has been so fascinating. I want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing this incredible information and just educating us, and something really not too hard to do. No,
it's free. Nature, it's a gift from nature. It's a birthright.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Well, I just want to thank you so much. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this week's podcast, Luach Aim. We build websites that soar. You guys should totally go check out my new website, holyhealthpodcast.com, to get an idea of what Luach Aim could do for your business. Contact Sarah Lee at +1 845 596 0842. She's going to help you bring your ideas into a tangible business presentation, whether through graphic design alone or a whole new website. Use code HolyHealth for a special discount. Don't you wish your team could understand each other, but really get each other? Not get set back by setbacks, but get creative so they will either win or learn. Rabbi Peretz Segal at Life Without Limits will train your team to work together like poetry in motion, letting each individual shine without blocking out the light of their coworkers. Come on, have you really changed that much? Do you really feel like you're living in your zone of genius? How much of your life is just stuff that's boring or stuff that's annoying? Are you bored? Do you feel that you have way more to give? Rabbi Peretz Segal at Life Without Limits has 25 years of experience helping people meet their greatness and delight in the struggle. Set up a free consultation today. Contact Rabbi Segal at lifewithoutlimits.academy, and there'll be a link in the show notes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Holy Health. I'm so excited to have back for his second visit, Rabbi Peretz Segal. Rabbi Segal is Okay, I just wrote eight's pre-colon, but I didn't know what I wanted to say. Hold on one second. Sometimes I make him take two and cut things. Okay, here we go again. So you run eight's pre-colon. That's not the word I'm looking for, though. I'm tired. What's the word I'm looking for?
The head, Rosh Kola.
The head, Rosh Kola. Okay, fine. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to Holy Health. I'm really excited to have Rabbi Peretz Segal back with us for his second visit. Rabbi Segal is the Rosh Kollel of Eitz Pri Kollel. He's also the founder of Life Without Limits, a corporate training and executive coaching service. I'm so excited to have you back here today.
Great to be here, and always, kind of stimulated by your fascinating podcast. So it's an honor.
Thank you so much. I just felt like the minute I recorded this podcast on grounding with Clint Ober, I just felt like it was something that would be up your alley, because you're a man of vast, ideas, and you look at all different things that sometimes many other people aren't looking at. And I just felt like this would be something that would be right up your alley.
Totally. I really I find it fascinating, and it seems like almost what's fascinating about the idea is the simplicity of really what it takes us to reconnect to who we are, is simply to just connect to the ground. And I was thinking, and it really kind of spurred a lot of thoughts for me, because if you think historically, I mean, there's one of the major themes throughout the Torah is our relationship with the earth. From the very beginning, the word Adam, which means person, is min ha'adama. So, from and I mean, it's even more, I suppose, relevant for our period of time now, just after, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and you've got in Unatan Tokef, which is this climactic prayer, Adam yosodo me'afar v'sofo la'afar, and a person's beginning is in the earth and the end is in the earth. So our relationship to the earth is deeply intimate. Avraham Avinu, Abraham even said of himself, Anochi afar v'efer, I'm just dust and ashes. And Yaakov, in his famous dream, so Jacob, he has his dream, and the dream is a sulam mutzav arza. It's a ladder which is rooted in the ground, but it reaches up to the heavens, which is this kind of this thing which actually I want to explore a little bit more. But just one more reference is when Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, sees the burning bush, the first thing that he hears prophetically is Shal na'alecha mi'al raglecha, take off your shoes. So I mean, exactly what these are like huge things which don't have the time and but definitely something to start think about this relationship between us and the ground, and how that works out. I want to explore really one idea that the Maharal discusses in the third parak of Tiferet Yisrael, and he dwells on this idea: what is the relationship between people and earth, and he describes it that there's something different about humanity that's an exception to the rest of the universe. And the way he describes it is in the realm of unrealized potential, meaning that the world outside of the human condition is up and running. Things work. The cause and effect is almost unbreakable, whether it be, the mystical spiritual world, where you've got these, a whole dimensions of systems which are set up and they just work, or if it's the natural world, being from South Africa and spending time in the bush, I've never met a lion that said, I'm going vegan. I just can't take this anymore. Just too many widowed impalas for me to handle. It just doesn't happen, because things are made, and that's the way they create is the way they stay. And then you've got humanity, which breaks all those rules. And the way we are is not the way we stay. Now, if you think about the nature of ground is solidity, yet everything, it's unmovable, static. But on the other hand, it's the source of all life. And it brings things into potential. In other words, the earth produces fruit. It's the source of everything that comes out. And the Maharal makes a comparison to a person. He says our actions are called the fruit of who we are. So we are like the ground, very much. We are ground. And what we do with our lives is either realize or lose out on that incredible growth potential that we have inside of us. So, I think that's first of all is there's another analogy which people actually use, even though it's a little bit out of context. The Adam, people say you can either say there's these two polar opposites. The one way is Adama, that he's from the ground, and there's a verse in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, in chapter 14, where it says, it's actually there, it's a critique of Nebuchadnezzar, but there are those that take it out of context, and they say the words Adama over there are used Adameh le'elyon, which means I'll become compared to the supreme. And there's this trace of the human struggle is, do I become a piece of dirt, or I do become the loftiest thing in the world? But circling back to Jacob's ladder, even if you're going to become the loftiest thing in the world, it has to be grounded. Your growth can't be in the air. You always have to return to the place from whence you came. And therefore, there's this incredible relationship of, I want to utilize the ground, but I don't want to escape it. Every morning, one of the first realizations we have in that kind of that meditative section before we start our morning service is Rokah Haaretz Al Hamayim, which is again this acknowledgement of being able to stand on terra firma is not something we take for granted in any way. So there are so many metaphors, but I just think in a very basic way, in every area of life, being grounded is the starting point of all great things. So when I was listening to that podcast, I thought it's very apropos that even from a physical, electromagnetic sense, if we don't get close to the ground, we almost kind of get all confused and bewildered, and we lack the stability and solidity that we need in order to keep ourselves upright and growing.
Well, that was excellent. Thank you. That was really, really good. And I think you're right. It's just so vast how many times Adamah is mentioned and in the Torah. So it really is, it really is something. Well,
and this is like just the beginning, because even like the altar was Mizbech Adamah. So there's really no end, but just opening up channels of thought.
No, I think that's great. And I think it's good for everyone to have food for thought. I think that's perfect. Well, thank you so much. I know you're really busy. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you. It was great being here again.
Thank you.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and any of our guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Joker Productions for editing this podcast.